Before we talk about Deadpool 2, I want to ask about the PG-13 Deadpool 2. I thought a feature had to run longer than 14 minutes. How have you made a PG-13 version of this film?
Actually, just a trailer. No, it actually turned out shockingly well. Better than we ever would imagine. We kind of cheat though, because you get to Deadpool gets to kind of address the fact that he's making this a PG-13 version of the film, and we of course had the legendary Fred Savage join us for an additional. No, he's really one of the greatest. I don't know why he's not starring in gigantic comedic films. He's amazing, so funny, and just so quick and smart, and so we added another 15 or 20 pages of dialogue and scenes and stuff, and it was a lot of fun.
Okay. The first movie obviously caught a lot of people by surprise, and that creates two issues for you guys. One is you're successful, so people know the idea and the conceit of what you're going to do. The second is it's successful, so you've got to do as well if not a little bit better than. So I guess the first question is, if the first film is kind of the clinical trial, proof of concept, what does that give you as writers to try to do in the second film? Does it give you a different kind of license, free license?
Nervous breakdown?
A nervous breakdown?
A lot of drafts, that's for sure. We definitely did a lot of drafts.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge part of it was to figure out what we could take away from Deadpool. I mean, we could have wanted to knock him down a peg, as we did in the first movie with where he got cancer. And that became, Vanessa's death. And once we solved that piece, then we realized we just wanted to make it a family film, and we backed into it from there.
It's also always interesting to me that we really see that in the first movie the budget was incredibly small for a superhero film, and necessity really is the mother of invention. Some of the best things that happened in Deadpool 1 happened because we just couldn't afford to go big, big, bang, bang all the time. So you suddenly have to lean on character as opposed to effects or spectacle. And then eventually the spectacle was the character, or the character was the spectacle. So that was a lesson, a hard-fought lesson that we learned in the first movie, and something we really applied to the second movie, which obviously had a little bit of a bigger budget simply by the nature of its release date, which is a summer movie. It's got to be a little bit bigger. We got a bigger cast and all that sort of stuff, but we still tried to keep it down to a shoestring budget in terms of what we wanted to accomplish. So there is a dog in the front row. That is amazing. And he's sound asleep, like my mother would be right around this part. And that's amazing. Yeah, it's very cute. Yeah. Rise and shine, sweetie. Hi.
Scary parts are over. Yeah. When you were thinking about things that you want to make fun of, if it's a throwaway line or it's actually, a direct reference to another film, let's just say it's a Fox film. So it's Fox and Friends. At what point do you actually have to run that by somebody? How much license do you have, and how much do you have to check in and say, we're thinking about this, and see if people will sign off on it?
The studio pretty much gave us free reign. We could make fun of anyone, I think.
Except one joke.
Yeah,
what was that?
There was a Disney joke in there that they made us stick out. And
you can put it in the next one now.
As I look back, for good damn reason, we'd all be over. The merger's safe. That was about it. No, they were pretty good. I mean, I don't know, target number one is Ryan Reynolds. So that's always, they all always green like that. You want to shoot who in the face at the end of the movie? It's like, me. But otherwise, no. We don't try to, we try not to take the piss out of too many. There's a Jared Kushner joke here and there, but other than that, we don't really take the piss out of too many people specifically.
Or people who don't have it coming.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
It's okay to look into the face of pure evil every now and again.
There are rules, obviously, to how these stories work and what you can and cannot do. Is it hard to define them? Do you know when you're writing what Deadpool can and cannot do and what he can and cannot say?
Well, I mean, the great thing about Deadpool is he's a character that breaks all the rules. Right. And so our philosophy when we sit down to write it is, we too want to break all the rules, the screenwriting rules. For example, Deadpool 2 doesn't have a traditional villain in the movie. The antagonist of the movie, the villain of the movie is Fire Fist as an adult. adult Fire Fist. So he's got, so our philosophy is, break all the rules, and we do that both on screen and behind the typewriter as well.
Yeah, Paul says there's so many things that you can't do in non-Deadpool movies that when you're writing a Deadpool movie, you almost have an obligation to do those kinds of things just because you can, like you wouldn't be able to in a traditional Marvel Studios film. So we really do look at the areas where, we might be able to do something specific to us that only we would be allowed to do.
The cocaine under the mask, for example.
I want curtains like these at my funeral. It's like, okay, everyone, you're done.
When you are doing additional dialogue, because Deadpool has his mouth covered, are you able to come back very late in editorial and either add dialogue to kind of connect stories, to clarify points, or to add jokes, or do you try to resist it?
No, we love it. I mean, we're pumping stuff into Deadpool's mask 4 weeks away from release, really.
We work harder in post than almost any time, just because, again, we have free license. We know how the movie's shaping. We know what it needs. We can test jokes, and so we're plussing. We're in the edit bay. Ryan's on his phone recording dialogue. Yeah.
A lot of words with friends.
Yeah. Mr. Porter.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, it's shocking how much of it's just stuff that happens naturally in a day, because you can't really invent that kind of chemistry or anything in the edit room. But usually we're just sort of fine-tuning little story points or things like that, adding stuff that you'd normally have to go back and pick up in a reshoot or something. So.
The timetable on Deadpool 1 from idea to release was how long?
About 10 years.
Okay, and Deadpool 1 or Deadpool 2 green light to release about a year?
Yeah, well, I mean, they green-lit us about a week before it released. They had an idea it was going to do pretty well, and then they gave us the green light. So we were but on the set we were talking about stuff. I mean, that scene where Cable is in the backseat of the cab and Deadpool accuses him of being racist and stuff, like we were writing that on the set of Deadpool 1, just sort of as a lark. But so little bits and pieces were already sort of conceived early.
So at what point do you settle on a story? I mean, is it something where you come up with a character, with a plot? I mean, what are the building blocks? You have such a long time in the first film to establish the world. When you're coming back to the sequel, you've established the world. Where do you start in terms of the next idea?
Well, I mean, I talked about it in jest, but we really did want Deadpool in the second movie to find a family. In the first movie, he finds romance. And in the second movie, he was going to find a family by the end of the movie, that family being the dysfunctional X-Force. So we kind of backed our way into that. I know that sounds strange, but we knew where we were headed, and then it was just about finding the map to get us there.
And what about this idea that Deadpool is probably his most effective as a character when he's in some sort of pain? That what you kind of keep coming back to is humanizing Deadpool and having him not suffer, but having him be vulnerable. How do you make sure that that's a recurrent idea, and how do you make sure that you're presenting it in a way that doesn't feel unearned?
I always just feel that Deadpool needs to be in some kind of extreme psychic distress in order to be palatable. I mean, the guy's so obnoxious and just so over the top. I mean, if you don't put him in a position of taking everything away from him and putting him in a position of being the underdog, I don't know how it would really work. I mean, he's a guy who's covered head to toe in scars. I mean, he's not living Oprah's best life every day. He's like, he's a guy that's like he carries around a pretty significant bag of rocks each day. So that helps. I mean, that helps everything that we want to accomplish in the movie. It helps us get away with a lot of stuff that you'd never get away with if you just were typical superhero in a spandex and with casually tossed hair and a spray tan.
I think it also makes Deadpool very relatable. It makes Wade Wilson very relatable to the audience. He's a guy who's suffering from all, the world just kicked him in the nuts and keeps kicking him in the nuts, and I think we can all relate to that, especially in Hollywood.
When you're making a movie at, say, Disney, you have a huge repository of Marvel characters. Fox, not so much. When you're thinking about the Marvel characters that you can use, how do you figure out who you want to bring in, who you're going to create, who you're going to tap, and how do you make sure that they're the right fit for the story?
Well, we wanted to kill all the Avengers, but they're doing it themselves. So, I love the Avengers. I love everything Marvel does. I love that we have a different stable of characters we get to use. I actually love that we find these really deep cut ancillary characters like Negasonic Teenage Warhead, who like appears in half a comic like 10 years ago, but we just love the name and love the sort of idea behind her. And so, you know, I like that stuff. Again, necessity is the mother of invention. So if you're finding these characters that aren't necessarily like the A-Squad X-Men guys, it sort of works, in a weird way, it works in Deadpool's favor.
At what point do you start talking about how this story is going to be presented cinematically? At what point does David Leitch, your director, become part of the conversation? And have you written very specifically, like, this is going to be a takeoff on the Aha music video? How much is he interpreting those scenes, and how much are you guys working collaboratively to make sure that he can bring a visual language to what you've written on the page?
I mean, you know, Dave is one of those guys that just, if he doesn't know how to do something, he'll just will it there. He just works so hard. He just works harder than everyone else in the room, and that's something that I think is why he's been so successful so far. But I mean, yeah, there's like the Aha stuff. I mean, like that was actually initially conceived as an opening to the movie a long time ago. We had an opening dance number to the whole film where, I don't know if anyone saw the Celine Dion music video to Ashes, but there's this incredible guy who's a dancer named Giannis Marshall, and I had found him on Instagram because I wanted to use him for the opening of Deadpool. I wanted to be very obvious that it was like not really Deadpool dancing or me dancing underneath the suit. So we wanted to do the sequence at the beginning where Deadpool's dancing, and you know, he's actually, there's the whole apartment that he's in that he and Vanessa shared together is slowly blowing up while he's dancing. But it's like this really beautiful dance, but it's also kind of something's really very disturbing about it. We don't know why, and at the end you see that he's trying to kill himself, and that's sort of the opening of the movie. But it turned out to be just too expensive, so we sort of trashed it. But then the Aha song sort of reappeared at the end of the movie in a great way. So.
When you are thinking about time travel as a plot device, it opens up a huge can.
It's the worst.
So why did you choose to do it? What does it give you narratively, and what traps does it set? Because, and I think there actually was I think it's on the DVD where Deadpool visits baby Hitler, is that right?
Yes, he does. Little Hitler. Yeah, it presents that problem for starters. It prevents a whole host of issues. I mean, you could sit there for days and go, wait, so at the end of this movie, you can sit there and think like, wait, was all this for naught? Like, I don't understand. You went back and you sort of, did Green Lantern even happen now? Like, I need to know.
It happened, Ryan. It happened.
Sure did. Oh, I was there for, I think, a year and a half. I think it was a Sunday. No, it's an old W.C. Fields joke that I love. Someone on the internet will be like, he stole that joke from W.C. Fields. Yes. Thank you, Paul. And fuck you.
But how do you make sure that you don't do exactly what you're saying? How do you make sure that you are obeying your own rules?
You say no. I mean, or what are you talking about? Oh, the time travel thing.
The time travel thing.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that it works for the story? You know, obviously, you can become overly intellectual about the rules and what is and is not happening.
Well, I mean, you have to try to plug every hole in the dike that you can, but knowing that at the end of the day, it's not entirely going to add up. You just have to let that go. And then sometimes point at it. We always have that strategy where if something's stupid, we just have someone in the movie say, that's stupid. Like,
there's a line in the movie where Deadpool says, well, that's just lazy writing. And that is actually the perfect example of lazy writing right there. That's lazy writing. Yeah. Let's not do time travel movies.
Your cast of superheroes and about their special skills and about that sequence, how early did that come into the writing process? How do you decide how that scene was going to unfold and what people's skills were and whether or not luck was actually a superpower?
Well, that's an entirely cuttable sequence in the movie, but it's something that doesn't necessarily need to be in the movie, but we found that we just needed a bit of a break before the convoy. So we were thinking, what would be funny? And I remember we were all sitting around pitching this idea that what if, Wade assembles like the actual X-Force, real characters that we know, and we sort of even do standees in theaters of them all. We really find some way to shut this down and make sure that nothing leaks. And then the initial pitch was, okay, then they'll all jump out of a plane, except they all land in a minefield. And like one by one, each of them just explodes. And then we're like, what the fuck is a minefield doing in the middle of a city? Like, this isn't, this is in the 1940s or something. It just doesn't make any sense. So then it's turned into this sort of Rube Goldberg type device where we just thought it was really fun to just sort of see one by one go and sort of live in Deadpool's reaction to each of these. And it's also like this wish fulfillment. He wants a family and he feels like he's finally got it. And then like one by one, they each of them die. And like it was just, I mean, the cast was incredible to do that. Brad Pitt to like come and shoot for 6 minutes in secret, like just about 100 feet that way in the soundstage there, like after we finished shooting for 3 months or 4 months at that point. And no, it was amazing. It was just that sequence was so much fun for us.
Do you have time to test it? Do you have time to show it to an audience, or is that dangerous in this day and age where story will get out and you're going to be screwed?
We never put Brad in there. That was
but any scene.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We test. I mean, we test here. It's like in this theater. It's, you know, you test and test and test.
What do you learn? And what comes in and what comes out? How do you make editorial changes through writing to solve things that may not be playing?
Well, one of the things we do is we tape the audience. We audio tape their laughter, and then we can play it against picture and see where they laughed and didn't laugh. And because Deadpool's in a mask, and Juggernaut is a CG character, and Colossus is a CG character, and you can also obviously use traditional ADR, we can change jokes up until the movie comes out, as we were pointing out earlier. So you do refine the movie, and you slowly figure out what's working and not, at least comedically. The rest of the things you have to kind of ask people after the fact, but it's a recursive process, and it actually really works. I mean, the finished version was significantly better than the version we first put in.
And it's dangerous, because you'll find that the movies need to ebb and flow a bit, so you'll take something out where you think there's an ebb, and you realize that it just, for some reason, has this domino effect later in the movie where you need that back, you know.
But you get you know, we're so involved in the process, you kind of lose perspective. Like, there was a big logic issue in Deadpool 1. People didn't really understand who Colossus was, where he came from. People who weren't comic guys. And we had kind of glossed over that. We went back and reshot some stuff to kind of explain, you know, where he came from. And that was a huge help for us.
We also always shoot the coda at the very, very end, after we've screened it. So we had already screened it a few times, and then we went back and shot this coda. We just thought it was kind of the perfect.
It gives you the chance to really get the feel of the movie and the tone and what it's really missing at the end. And so, yeah, that's always our last.
That was a big debate, that whole coda at the end of the film, too, because I think it was Dave Leitch who said, what if we somehow found some way to keep Vanessa alive? And you know, I remember he and I, like, it's like one of our only arguments, and I was like, you coward, you know, and then I thought, oh wait, no, that's actually a good idea. What if we just up the ante and just have some fun with the time travel? Then we all just dug in and started writing the
because originally we had a coda where he was just interviewing a whole new bunch of X-Force people, and we were going to have various people come in, like Chris Evans was going to come in.
As the Human Torch.
The Human Torch.
Yeah. Also, we had one where Deadpool's like in the rain at a cemetery, and he's like pouring booze over the graves of each of his like fallen X-Force friends, and then first inexplicably gets to Shatterstar and urinates on his grave. I don't know, it's just like so stupid. And then Peter shows up with like missing one arm with just like that sort of old-fashioned hook prosthetic, and yeah, I mean you could fill a gymnasium with the amount of dumb ideas that we have. I mean the first pass of the sequel, we had like one of the I think it was the B plot was Deadpool trying to steal the big red chair from The Voice. So dumb. You know, I wish I could have watched the studio reading that draft. Going like, this is going to sink the ship.
But how do you create a space where you can throw out ideas like that? I mean, it seems like part of the success of Deadpool is that you don't tie yourselves down, that you're willing to do something as preposterous as that idea and see how far it goes. How do you make sure that you don't censor yourself too early?
Well, we never, I mean, the three of us, we sit around and just make each other laugh, and that ultimately, you know, guides the process of what goes down on the page. So, I don't know if that answered the question.
But where are you on the next Deadpool film? Even vague.
Well, we have some ideas. We even have a script written. One script written that may or not, yeah, I think that's another one where the studio read it and go like, we have to keep the rights to Fantastic Four. Oh God, what have they done? Paul just pitched a whole Deadpool 3 in the hallway outside before we walked in here. So I don't know.
X-Force movie brewing too, so there's a lot of ideas in the hopper.
Yeah.
And Ryan, last question. When you called the Academy a couple months ago and said, I've got this idea for Best Popular Film, did you anticipate the backlash? Did that really catch you by surprise? It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, it really did, right? I mean, what the hell? Like, Rambo 9 stands no shot at this point. I mean, the old popular, that lasted about 45 minutes, didn't it?
A little bit longer, but an hour and 15.
Pretty sketchy, yeah.
Red and I went out and got tuxedos and then had to return them.
You rented them, so.
True.
We'll see you back here soon, I hope.
So too.
Brian, Paul, Brett. Thank you all for coming out.